We're going to start by talking about Liberty Media.
Liberty.
This story has been simmering on the stove for several months, actually, maybe even longer.
You could say it's been simmering.
Yes, simmering. Yes. The announcement is maybe as soon as tomorrow coming out that they are going to buy out MotoGP and own Formula One and MotoGP.
You know, every time I come to work, I think to myself, no, nothing crazy could happen like Verstappen going to Mercedes or Hamilton going to Ferrari. Oh, are you kidding me?
Yeah.
What?
Yeah, well,
Pigs will fly.
MotoGP and Formula One in the same corporate umbrella. How would that be?
It's happened before.
Yes, it was in the past, right?
Bernie Ecclestone bought Two Wheel Productions, or named it Two Wheel Productions, when it was owned by CVC for many years. So that's before the Dorna era. So I remember it well.
In the 90s or something?
Yeah, but they split it up. The European Monopolies Commission jumped in. And I guess when you think about it, both those companies were European. I wonder now, given that we've got an American company involved, whether those rules apply.
My guess is
No.
that they wouldn't, because there's no way they're going to spend this money or go this far with it. But they're two American companies. Why would they be bound by European rules?
They're not American companies. You mean Bridgepoint is?
Well, I'm sorry. When they buy, if Liberty buys MotoGP, it'll be MotoGP and Formula One owned by Liberty, which is an American company.
And they'd also, because Dorna owned World Superbikes, they would, besides a few national championships, they would own both championships. So it's a bit like owning F1 and F2, or F1 and Indy, actually closer to the truth.
Yeah,
and that's a hugely powerful thing. The deal is meant to be worth 4 billion.
4 billion euros.
Billion, and I'll do that. But that really makes things interesting. You could pontificate that, therefore, the net worth of the motorsport holdings of Liberty Media could be up as high as 25 billion, given that Formula One has been quasi-appraised at 20, although most people think that that's going up. Yep.
The Saudis, the rumor was the Saudis offered 20 billion, and that was a year ago.
Well, yeah, seeing what they've done with golf, this could be the next bomb to drop.
Yeah. You know my theory on that, right? How
they're bored of sand?
That F1 has gotten so far down the road with the carbon neutral by 2030, they've brought on sponsors. Because that I'm sure that was part of the discussion when you're bringing on sponsors. Well, we don't want to be involved in a carbon negative sport, a dirty sport. Well, they were saying we're going to be carbon neutral by 2030, and then you bring them all in, and then the Saudis buy them, and then all of the sponsors leave. Now, would Saudi even care? They print money every day, and they play with funny money because
they have, when they start to talk to the world about oil, they hold it in, Qatar.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Anyway.
It's good stuff.
Well, I mean, look, there's so many interesting ramifications of this. And
good word.
You brought up one that has already been talked about a joint weekend.
It's something that has never really taken a lot of, seriousness. But when you consider the amount of Formula One tracks that also run MotoGP, and COTA is one.
COTA may be the best example.
The best example, actually. Barcelona is another.
Yeah.
And there are a few. The point is, from a safety point of view, you have to make sure. So there's always been a wrangle between the height, for example, of the curbs. You make the curbs higher when you're trying to make racing drivers in a car not use the grip. So it upsets the car, it upsets the floor of the car. But for motorcyclists with their knee and shoulder literally clamping the ground, they're too high. And it was one thing that was discussed. Yeah, and there was one thing that was discussed at Formula One versus MotoGP, and they had to react to that over the years. But now they've got it, and here in 2 weeks we'll have MotoGP, and last week we had NASCAR. So it really is one of the few tracks that is ready for both.
But there was also some other factors about tracks that don't make them great for both series, including the tightness of corners and things like that, right?
Well, I mean, you think about Miami or you think about Jeddah, it's just walls, so you can't have bikes there. The only bike race that is like that is kind of the Alaman TT or Macau, but that really is, I've never been a big proponent that even though I did Macau for 30 years, I never really covered the bike race. I did a documentary on it. I didn't enjoy it because it was, one mistake. Our good friend Kevin Schwantz managed to do it all on one wheel, but that was because he was at the top of his game and he was riding, his MotoGP bike. But it's a festival-like thing. It's not a world championship venue, and so too would any circuit like Miami that has walls, etc. So yeah, you've got to pick and choose between where you could and couldn't go. But I can see where, Spain and the US would be two great markets to create a festival of speed, both 2 and 4 wheel.
Yeah, Spain would go crazy for
Wouldn't
this.
they?
All of us gearheads and motor racing fans would just go nuts. This would be like the biggest event ever. You'd get to see the 2 biggest world championships in our world together. But Spain would just be on another level with the popularity of MotoGP.
Well,
and
and
everything over there.
you would lose your anorak because you probably don't know this, but so much of what has been developed in Formula One is now trickling down into motorcycle racing. So when the fins on the Ducati, for example, the aerodynamics of a motorcycle were never even thought of back in the day. So now
the winglets and all
that.
Yep.
Use of wind tunnels, use of space. People like Adrian Newey show up a lot at MotoGP. There is a definite, absolute correlation between Red Bull Racing and the Red Bull sponsored team in MotoGP. Same with which is KTM. Then there's also Aprilia. There's a lot of ties between Ferrari and Aprilia, and there's a lot of crossover.
And this is pretty new, isn't it?
It's
like decade, maybe.
It's about the last decade. I remember seeing Adrian Newey and was surprised to see him at a MotoGP many years ago in Spain, of all places. And I remember sitting down, and he was sort of holding court with a couple of riders, and I kind of joined the table, as it were. And I was like, I didn't know you like bikes. And he goes, I really like to look at how they use the space and how they compact it.
I think of Adrian Newey having that conversation, and it's like the Matrix. He's seeing the wind coming around the motorcycles, like the Matrix, like Neo saw the Matrix. Because think about that. Think about him. He's basically conquered the world of F1 like no aerodynamicist ever. There's Adrian Newey, and then the next guy below him is miles behind him.
Bob Smith.
So think about
some bloke you've never heard of.
So think about the challenge of 2 wheels. And how, in F1 you can control it all, but how do you control it when the rider moves from one side of the bike to the other?
Yep. Well, and that's and the other side of it is the humans involved in both sports absolutely love MotoGP and vice versa. But especially the 4-wheel guys, they really, there's no question. If you're at a Formula One paddock, those guys walk out with a puff chest and they know that they're the kings of all they survey. Put them in a MotoGP surrounding and they go, oh my gosh, I am humble. I am not worthy of these absolute, we used to call them the aliens in MotoGP because they just weren't from this planet. Marc Marquez is not a human. Nor's his brother or his dad or his mum.
and when they go out, the phrase, put your life on the line.
Oh,
they actually do. That it still happens.
To give you a comment today, I was watching Portugal and the commentator said, well, these boys in MotoGP are as tough as nails, and the fact that he isn't getting up tells you he's hurt. He said, because usually they pop up and off they go again.
Well, and speaking of MotoGP,
we
got to come in Dakota.
Couple of weeks.
Yeah.
Looking forward to it.
Yeah, we're going to be on the microphones, and your friend Kevin Schwantz is going to join you in the booth.
Yep. So if you're not, if you don't know or you're not going to think about it, come down. We'll be on the mics. We've got the MotoGP legend that is Kevin Schwantz. Of course, they retired his number. I think he was the first one ever to have a retired number,
Yeah.
The 34.
Yeah.
Simoncelli, when he passed away, his number was also retired. And there's been a couple of others.
Yeah. And what about underseries on this, undercard series?
Well, you've got Moto 2 and you've got Moto 3.
Are they doing anything else?
Yes, the baggers.
That's right. I knew there was something else. Yeah, the baggers.
Which has really caught me by surprise because I know absolutely nothing. Well, I do.
We got to find an expert to bring in the booth.
Well, anybody from Moto America will tell you all about the baggers. I mean, it's become.
But we'll talk about at least the basics of it.
Oh, yeah. If you want to know what that is, if you've ever seen an Indian or a Harley Davidson with big, great bags on the back, that's what a bagger is. And they race them, and they race them hard.
Yeah.
So it's actually quite a spectacle, and it's a bit juxtaposed to what you're seeing Marc Marquez do. I said,
Yeah.
what does the first bagger over the line? Does he give the pole man his lunch and then takes his lunch from the bag? Is that what happens?
Well, what are the bikes? I mean,
They're Harley Davidsons or Indians or, big old 1,000cc baggers.
So it's kind of like comparing MotoGP, Formula One
It's
to
a very,
NASCAR.
it's a very American thing.
Yeah.
You don't go to the motorway in England and see baggers everywhere. But if you show up in California or Miami or, spring break in Daytona, you'll see plenty of baggers.
All right. And you know what? I know that tickets are still available for, I'm just checking Coda's website. I know they're still available for MotoGP because they don't sell out that thing, not even by any stretch, but it's a great event to go to, man, because
it's a great event.
It's not the insanity that Formula One is. I'm just looking at details, like a single day ticket, $39 is where they start.
That's really good.
Jeez,
really good.
That must be Friday. Yeah.
That's really good.
Yeah, Sunday tickets, I think.
And, if you're not a motorcycle fan, give it a go.
Yeah.
I tell you, if you're
now,
listening
Sunday
to
tickets,
this...
GA, $59.
Come on.
For Sunday.
Yeah, bring little Billy.
Yeah.
And by the way, we've got some skin in the game too. You talk about, the sort of changing world of MotoGP and Formula One. Trackhouse from NASCAR,
Great
Justin
example.
Marks' team, yeah.
An American team.
An American team, Trackhouse, which is owned by both Pitbull, the rapper, and Justin Marks, who's a former racer and entrepreneur himself. Did a lot of NASCAR, currently doing Trans Am. Great guy. He has a NASCAR team with Daniel Suarez and Ross Chastain. They're doing very well, but it's a pretty new team, a bit like Michael Jordan's team. So, NASCAR.
And they don't have American drivers yet.
No. No, Ross Chastain, they do. Now they've gone to MotoGP. And they have just started. Yeah, they've got 2 European riders, good ones too.
Yeah.
But the idea is now we actually do have American racing in Moto2, and we have with Joe Roberts, and we also have Trackhouse. So the interest is there, and of course that cross-pollination, NASCAR to MotoGP, Formula One with MotoGP potentially. So it's blurring, and it's blurring in a good way.
Yeah. Well, that's very cool. But this is a cool event coming. So, all right, let's get a break in. You listen to your Sunday Night with Speed City, and we'll be back after a quick break. All right, if you're on YouTube or Facebook, stay with us because we do not go to break. Yeah, anybody call up 512.
If you're on YouTube, you know what this is all about, so we want to hear from you.
That's true. If you are on YouTube. Let's check out what everybody's saying. Kevin Kelly, it's the new time, 5 p.m. Central. Allie says, I wish they would buy IndyCar, talking about Liberty Media. Yeah, we're going to talk IndyCar later in the show. We're going to talk about the thermal situation.
That would be a conflict of interest in my mind.
Yeah, then you're a monopoly. Yeah, I can see that.
Of single racing.
But unless you own, I bet they could get away with it. Unless you own NASCAR.
Yeah.
Because NASCAR, the audience of NASCAR is bigger than MotoGP, even the new IndyCar and Formula One combined. So, NDP says he got the memo. Let's do this. The 5 p.m. memo, that is. Kevin Kelly has buy the stock now. That's a good thought, KK.
It's a very good idea.
David Lawrence, F1 took the sprint idea from MotoGP. So there,
True, they did.
Yeah, I think MotoGP took that sprint idea a little too far, man. Every freaking weekend, I don't know. All right, that was a quick break. We're coming back.
Hello to everyone, this is Gunther Steiner, this is Speed City.
Welcome back to the fastest hour in radio, Speed City.
We got a Gunther Steiner story coming later in the show. We'll talk about that. But during the break, with the folks on YouTube, we were talking about MotoGP, and we were talking, David Lawrence said F1 took the sprint idea from MotoGP.
They did.
Yeah.
But they took it too far.
Yeah,
the reason being I say that is that now every MotoGP weekend has a sprint race for less points, very similar to the way that Formula One do it. But they did it first, so it's their idea. But I don't like it because, A, it doesn't mean anything because the points aren't there.
Yep.
And it's not a Grand Prix win. So you have to explain it. It's like, oh, so-and-so won, but he won a sprint race. He didn't win a Grand Prix.
Right. You have to explain it every time.
And the truth is, these guys, we've said it just earlier, these guys are hell-bent for leather. They don't hold back when it's 12 laps versus 27.
Yeah.
They're going full on. And so when they come off and break an arm or break an ankle or worse, They're not racing on Sunday, and that's a dilution of the product in my mind.
Yep, that's been the complaint.
Harsh as that may sound.
Well, no, I mean, and Bob said it. He was like, he said he doesn't particularly like Bob Varsha, who's with us on our F1 stuff.
And he is a MotoGP.
Yeah, it's like you dilute the name Grand Prix. You dilute the whole idea of a race.
And I also don't. I think it's more of a selfish thing. I don't like it as a journalist working in it because the whole point of a Grand Prix weekend is to build from Friday to Saturday to Sunday, and the crescendo is that checkered flag on Sunday. And you then look back at, do you remember on Friday he fell off and he did this and he did that, and then they fixed the bike and then they couldn't find this and they couldn't find that, and his arm's not very well and all this sort of. So you've got drama all the way through the weekend. But if you start to go, you kind of like mix it up with a sprint race and everybody's celebrating and he won the sprint race and now he's sixth and it just doesn't. You can't tell the storyline as accurately.
Yeah, and by the way, I was talking to Simon Patterson, who's in the booth with us last year. He's going to be with us again probably this year.
Okay.
And if you're looking for a good MotoGP follow, he's great. Simon Patterson.
He's on the race, yeah.
Yeah, he does the Dash Race. He does those guys, and he's great on Twitter. And he's going to be with us in the booth. But he said the same thing about the sprint race. It's too much. Yeah. He said that last year. We'll see how he feels. I do like the experiment, and it's them doing it first rather than F1 or something. So we'll see. Hey, and you know what? Let's go continue this two-wheel discussion because there's some good comments here on YouTube.
Okay.
Andy P says, I love the idea of a combined event. I wonder how the riders would feel about different types of rubber being laid down throughout the weekend.
That's another thing. Pirelli are now right across the board because Pirelli have just started in MotoGP. So it certainly makes their life in Milan really nice because they can produce rubber for both. But he's right. The lines are different. Completely different.
And the rubber's different now, and who knows? And, even if it's Pirelli doing both, the rubber is going to be different. They're so different in the demands, the technology. So, but that's a really good point, Andy, of course, always as Andy. David Lawrence says, I don't know about how I feel about Liberty taking over MotoGP.
Okay.
It's just odd. I can see that, but...
Play that out, as the doctor would say. Why?
Why, David? Why? We need to know.
We need to
lay down on the sofa.
Feel? How do you really feel?
Kevin Kelly said that would be cool for the different lines each would take. There you go. He's talking about what you just said.
Yeah.
Barcelona not having F1 anymore. We were talking about Barcelona and COTA being the ideal circuits. But you never know who's going to have have Formula One or MotoGP going forward.
By the way, Joe Roberts is second in the championship coming into COTA.
That's amazing that we have an American rider.
29 points. He's 2 points off the lead.
Chris Breezy says the wings and the bikes are getting crazy. Yes,
but that's because of Formula One. What they've learned from Formula One.
What we were talking about earlier. Yeah. So Joe Roberts is still in Moto 2.
Yes, he is.
But still, the fact that he's second in the Moto 2. You know what that means? If you reach that level, to me, if he could finish in the top 2 or 3, that's an automatic.
He's coming to MotoGP.
And how old is he? How old is Joe Roberts?
23, maybe 24.
I was thinking he was late 20s. That's great, man. So we're going to have...
And guess what?
If he keeps this up, we'll have an American in MotoGP for the first time since...
And I hope he keeps his sponsors. OnlyFans American Racing is the team.
Oh, yeah. Oh, that's right. Y'all may have heard this story. We were on the microphones at COTA, and the OnlyFans kept popping up as a sponsor. And we didn't know. I knew that it was
because we're old and fuddy.
We kind of knew. I kind of knew what it was. You put your webcam on, but I didn't realize it was.
The internet is full of neat stuff.
Yeah, you didn't know that congressmen were spending $300,000 a year.
Right. I didn't know it was a company expense to watch people take their clothes off. So I did not know that. But yeah.
Yeah, thankfully, that hasn't made the Speed City culture, thankfully.
Yeah, no one's paying us to take our clothes off.
Disgusting act. And it's unfortunate.
It's very unfortunate.
We had that on our air live.
Yeah, we did.
We've given Casey a chance to use every single button he has in there. Yeah. Oh, yeah, David Lawrence said it. Joe's in Moto 2. That's right.
Challenge accepted.
He's going to use them all.
Nice, Casey.
But really, we've only had 2 races so far in MotoGP, and Moto 2 and Moto 3. One in Qatar and one, one in Qatar and one in Portugal. So it's brand new season. There's some great stories up and down the paddock, including the world champion, the 2-time world champion, Pecco Bagnaia, being taken out by the 6-time world champion, with 3 laps to go in Portugal. So coming in,
Yeah.
the gloves are drawn between mi hermanos.
Yeah.
So that's going to be fun.
And tune in, because now if you don't go to the race in Austin here, you can tune in on TNT.
TNT, yeah.
And Discovery. I haven't figured it all out, but I have YouTube TV instead of cable. And they're automatically recorded. I had them, I had the series recorded from the last time.
Yeah, it's so Warner Discovery are the parent company. And if you know Warner Brothers, obviously they're a huge film company, but they also have Warner Brothers and Cartoon Network and CNN, and funnily enough, HBO and Max. And I feel that, and if you look at I was looking at it today, if you look at the output that Max has sport-wise, they have the March Madness, they have the NHL, and now they will have MotoGP. So, like Apple and like so many other big companies, Amazon and so on, they're getting into live sport as the last bastion of money-making. And so, yes, this is a new TNT. I don't have TNT. Where is it? True TV. What the heck's that?
But you might have it and you don't know it.
But you certainly have, you probably have Max, or you probably have HBO, which is Max. And you could be soon down the road with this potential new buyout with Liberty, be seeing it.
Yeah.
So I do feel that MotoGP is going the way of Formula One in this country, and that there will be potentially a Drive to Survive type thing. They've tried it on MotoGP, it just hasn't worked yet. But a better one that you would see on Max, and that would then cross-promote to see it live on TNT, and then it may actually transmit to a popular audience on Max.
And David Lawrence brings up a great point. He says, baffles me, as popular as MotoGP is globally, it's not even sniffing the levels of IndyCar popularity. And David, you know what it needs? It needs a Drive to Survive, because, I mean, arguably, in some ways, we have already touched on it, but it's way cooler than F1 in the human factor.
It is.
Right? You get in the car in F1 and you're strapped in as tight as you can possibly be. In motorcycle racing, you're all over the bike. You're a part of the aerodynamics. You're a part of the balance. You're a part of everything.
Your arm and shoulder are touching the ground. It's ridiculous. And by the way, they're going faster than Formula One.
Yeah.
But
215 at COTA, where the max COTA
we
is
stood there on the
205.
back straight, watched them come through.
With a radar gun.
Yep. Yeah. They're phenomenal. But to answer David Lawrence's question, I think, and I can remember the time when MotoGP had long before COTA, and I used to cover it in England. We used to have Laguna Seca when Nicky Hayden was at the top of his game, and we used to have Indianapolis. So there were 2, in fact, way before Marquez started winning every race that COTA ever had, he was winning every race that Indianapolis ever had. So, the potential, and if you want to put a real thumb down on it, why not 3 MotoGPs in America? One at Laguna Seca, one at Indianapolis, and one at COTA. Or there is a new track being built in Tennessee, which our good friend Eric Paradis is involved in. And I know that there are talks going on, potentially, of getting MotoGP there. So, and with Mr. Bussamundo, the
MotoGP
new man,
rep,
American guy from NFL, from NBA, there may well be a view to getting more MotoGP races in the States. And I think 3 would tick the needle a little bit. And, of course, Joe Roberts, Trackhouse, more Americans. There's plenty in Moto America. We just need to send them.
Well, so think about this. Liberty Media is not going to pay $4.3 American dollars, by the way, billion, unless they see this, unless they see exactly what we're describing. They want to reproduce what they've done with F1. I don't know if you can strike lightning in a bottle again with a Drive to Survive type thing, but you might be able to. But even if you're half as successful,
well, I mean, but yeah, you're right.
But they're not buying it expecting not to do that.
I don't think you can put both portfolios down and going, okay, what can we do in MotoGP that we did in... No, but what you can look at is, hey, Red Bull are involved in both. And hey, Pirelli are involved in both. And hey, on and on. Well, Tissot and Rolex.
You get them together. You get the drivers and the riders together at events. And just like we're saying, these joint weekends for races, you get them together on Drive to Survive if the popularity continues like it appears to be. I was at a Easter breakfast brunch today, a brunch thing, and one of my friends asked me what was going on in F1, and we were talking, and this 14-year-old girl was serving up her plate, and she was like, She goes, she started answering the questions faster than I was to him. And he asked her, he said, he goes, oh yeah, I'm a Drive to Survive fan, but also my dad's a big fan. I've been watching for years. That never happened a decade ago. You never. People, when you said F1, didn't even know what you were talking about. Is that NASCAR?
Yeah. And it's funny, growing up in England in the 70s, there was always a Formula One is for the wealthy fighter pilot type, elite Ferraris, etc. Motorcycle racing is for the common man. It's dirty, oily, greasy rags in a back of a garage somewhere and throw it out on track. And I grew up with that. And Barry Sheen was my hero, Kenny Roberts. They grew up on dirt. There was always this sort of, what shall I say? It was a working man's sport. Speedway has been that way. Dirt track has been that way. And it's true of four wheels too. But what's interesting is that in my lifetime, that has changed dramatically. If you walk into a MotoGP pit, it's exactly the same as a Formula One pit.
Yeah, the money's
it's immaculate.
There. Yeah.
There isn't a bit of oil anywhere.
Yeah, right.
These things are absolute NASA rockets.
Yeah, and it's like a surgical hospital when you walk in. Yeah.
So the point is that has changed.
Well, as a good segue to you're talking about, the changes. We're going to talk about the elitism of F1. We're going to talk about the IndyCar thermal event and how that and
okay, yeah,
and we're going to talk about that. But let's get another quick break in, and we'll be back after the quick messages.